Good morning, or good evening, or good night, depending on the time that you're watching. My name is Evan Pavlich. I am in the Kenosha Extension site of SEU, and this is through the Introduction to Literary course. This is going to be the reading engagement number 3, which is the graphic interpretation of the poem Divorce by Billy Collins. Title being Divorce. You got a lot of sloppy drawing just because divorces aren't pretty. Try and patch them up, but sometimes it doesn't always work. And then it is somewhat of a shorter poem, but still has a lot inside of it that we could unpack and draw on. So the first picture is this, which is based on the first line called "Once two spoons in bed, now tined forks." Spoons are known to be smooth edge objects, and when spoons are set near on top of another, they will fit comfortably with each other, which is an interpretation of the intimacy in the relationship. Forks are not known to be smooth-edged objects since they have prongs, and the way that the forks were described in bed was that they are tined, and the definition of tined in Merriam-Webster is that they are slender pointed projecting part. So a fork that would be bent, that's not really a fork anymore, it's just an aggravated fork is how that's described. Last, in reference to the intimacy of the relationship, if something's being held or if something is holding something else, especially in bed, the usage of the word tined directs the lack of intimacy or comfort in bed. And when forks are tined, it's hard to settle with anything, including another tined fork. When multiple forks are tined, it can be an uncomfortable mess where no intimacy is met. Henceforth, you have the spoons, the smooth edge objects, and then you have the forks on the other side, and they're facing the opposite way on the bed because nothing is comfortable anymore. Next we have across a granite table, and that one is depicted here as across a highway, basically, just because of the distance. Across is a synonymous term for distance, used to describe distance or length of, and distance can be related to a lack of closeness, which can be related to a lack of desire to be near someone or something. The term across was specifically placed in this text to dictate that the positions from both parties of this relationship are choosing to be far away from one another. Again, this is a choice. They're choosing to sit away from each other. Granite table could be used as an item used to describe distance or class in this relationship. It could be a literal description of a kitchen table or a living room table that separates two locations. Whether it's for literal or figurative speech, there is a large amount of distance that has grown between these two people, henceforth why the granite table actually looks more so like a bridge, the highway below it. The type of table material may seem important as it can relate to the large weight or large burden that is separating the two lovebirds. Granite's kind of a more dense, thicker, heavy material, so it's kind of seen as a heavier object, especially in this relationship. The placement of the two people is important. If the two people were sitting adjacent, they might not have as huge of a problem. This couple is choosing to sit directly across from one another. Sitting directly across from someone and not next to them can be seen as a form of adding professionalism to the relationship, which could hinder intimacy, especially during conversation or during meals. And if two tined forks are sitting across from a normal size or smaller size granite table, if the table were a little bit smaller, like in the living room setting, then the tined parts of the forks could collide and cause unintentional stress or irritation because of the friction or the rubbing of the tined portions of the forks for one or both parties. And next we have the finishing part of the poem, which is, "And the knives they have hired." Simple fact, knives are sharp. Knives can be used to cut an item into separate items. The item that the knives are cutting apart in this poem would be the marriage. Cutting something with a knife takes effort. If the relationship is being cut, then there must have been some unintentional or intentional effort used to slowly cut the relationship into separate portions. There is no source to this effort that caused the relationship to become harsh. Some forms of overlooked relationship killers include controlling behavior, still communicating with exes, getting to routine, or not acknowledging issues or habits that bother you, as well as not taking time for oneself. Cutting something with a knife additionally takes time. It's not overnight that this marriage has come to the doorway of divorce. An example of time hurting a relationship would be like oil in a car. If the oil isn't checked on from time to time, the car may end up not starting. This causes smaller problems that build up slowly until the car eventually does not start. The knives that were referenced in this poem were hired. Hired specifically quoted, meaning that both the parties of the relationship have decided to participate in a game of cat and mouse to see who walks out of the relationship alive. Henceforth, in each picture, they're both in a different location, the black middle line separating each of them, but they are doing the same acts of paying off knives to deal with the other person. They look kind of similar in each picture, the male and the female, just because it is a similar act, and so this is seen as one of those few times where their relationship is actually working together in more of a darker kind of way, where they're trying to get to each other, and that's the way that they're able to like think in the same way, or they're able to do the same things. And then in the sense of silverware, knives are kept close to each user of silverware during the meal. In a place setting, which is how you set your silverware, the knife is set to the direct right of the plate or the dish, and in a formal place setting there might be multiple knives that are set to the right of the plate. So if there's a granite table, then there could be a few extra knives set to the right of the plate, which could be the extra knives that were hired to deal with the other person. If there are a few extra knives set to the right of the plate, then it means that there could be, again, multiple hired knives that could cut or damage the relationship. Thank you very much for your time. That was my illustration of The Divorce by Billy Collins.